All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mr. Coleman's class, and we're going to be talking about the legislative branch today. And as we can see here, this is a picture of what the House of Representatives would look like, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. All right. So first, take a second, pause the video, and think to yourself, what are the three branches of government? All right. If you were able to correctly say the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch, then you would be correct. And here is an image to help you out a little bit more. This is a tree with three branches, and as we can see, we have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And just think of them as tree branches. It'll help you a lot when you're trying to memorize them later on, thinking of them as three distinct things, but they grow out of one tree, and you can kind of think of that as American government. So before we get into the legislative branch, we really need to think about this concept of separation of powers. So separation of powers is basically making sure that each branch is responsible for their own duties, making sure that the president is doing what the president does in the executive branch, making sure what the Supreme Court and the judicial branch is doing, and also making sure that no branch is getting too much power. And that is why I've included this picture of a scale back here. And it's making sure that each branch is checking and balancing the other branches. That way, if the executive branch is getting too much power and they're over here and they're outweighing the judicial branch and legislative branch, these two branches can come over and say, hey, you're having too much power. They're going to enact laws. They're going to perform certain processes in order to make sure that the executive branch is not having too much power and is not controlling the way the government is operating. These are three equal branches, and they each exist to serve the American people. So the legislative branch, it was announced in Article 1 of the Constitution. It has the power to make laws, and it can also originate spending bills and help write treaties, as well as declaring war. Spending bills are basically how the government is going to get the funding and the money. And treaties, as we can see and as we know, help end wars or help come to agreement. And also, the legislative branch is very important for wars. If America was deciding to go and declare war against someone, they would need the legislative branch to come together and say, yes, like that's something we need to do, rather than the president saying, hey, I think we should just go commit an act of war against some other country. That's a way that we can see the checking of power. Who is in the legislative branch? The legislative branch is in Congress, and then within Congress there are two parts, the House of Representatives and the Senate. In this image right here, we can see that there are two distinct houses, one serving as the Senate, one serving as the House of Representatives. So the Senate, there are 100 members, two representatives from each state, and they serve a term for 6 years. This man right here is one of the senators from South Carolina. Can anybody name or think to yourself really quick who this man is? If you said Tim Scott, then you were correct. And we have one more. What about him? If you said Lindsey Graham, then you are also correct. So in order to be a senator, you have to be at least 30 years old. You must be a citizen of the U.S. for at least 9 years, and you must be living in the state that you are a senator for. You cannot come from California, live in California, and decide to be a senator for South Carolina. That's not how it's going to work. Now on to the House of Representatives. There are 435 members. Each state is guaranteed at least one because this is a proportion of the population. So bigger states are going to get more representatives. Smaller states are going to have less. But each state is guaranteed at least one, and they serve for 2-year term limits. So think to yourself for a second, do you know who the House of Representatives member is for this Pickens County, this upstate area of South Carolina? This is him right here, and if you said Jeff Duncan, then you are correct. Moving on, to be a member of the House of Representatives, you must be at least 25 years old. You have to be a United States citizen for at least 7 years, and then you must be living in the state that you represent. You cannot come from New York or Hawaii and say, I want to be a member of the House of Representatives for South Carolina, because you do not live here. Now, for more information on the legislative branch, please type in this link, watch that video, and have a great rest of your day.